CoL, can you hear us? Your microphone is muted, I know.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Good. Okay, and we can hear you.
Good.
Thank you.
Welcome. Welcome to the celebration of the life of Elise Andre, who shared Loretto life with us for over 22 years. A special welcome to Elise's brother David and to her friends from Berea College and beyond, Berea, Kentucky, actually, and beyond. Elise brought much joy to us here through her flute, her laughter, and her love of life. We will pray and then share our memories of Elise.
This remembrance of Elise is written entirely in her own words. It is really the story of her life, her spiritual life, the story of her accomplishments, her many different kinds of contributions can be found in the biography that we have in our dining room, which we'll be glad to make available to the family as well. But Elise wrote this, most of it at the time that she applied for co-membership. I was born on April 26, 1937, in St. Mary's Catholic Hospital in Clarksburg, West Virginia, to loving Christian parents. My mother, daughter of a Northern Baptist minister, was an English teacher. Unfortunately, she had to give up her job when she married because the sentiment of the day was that she would have a husband to take care of her. They really could have used that second salary. My father, the son of a Belgian glassblower, emigrated to the United States at age 8 with his parents and only brother. At that time, the Catholic Church in Belgium did not mean much to those without money, so my grandparents, in effect, shed their religion when they arrived in the New World. Both my parents were from very modest backgrounds, but worked hard on their own initiative to obtain good educations. How fortunate that there was a college in their hometown of Salem, West Virginia. It was during his student days that my father became active in the Methodist Church. My parents married in their early 30s, only after my father had paid back his debt for going to law school. Besides myself, they had a daughter, Nancy, before me, and a son, David, after me. My parents managed to realize the American dream for themselves. My early years were quite happy with school, piano lessons, flute lessons, and of course, Baptist Sunday school every Sunday. Despite my mother's insistence, I was never active in youth groups. When I was older, I went to church with her. After Sunday school, my father normally went to the office during church. Back home afterwards, it was often he who prepared Sunday dinner. We spent the summers at the Chautauqua Institution in upstate New York, where I participated in music classes and cultural events. I loved the inspirational church services in the huge amphitheater at Chautauqua. My parents often talked about how much fun high school had been for them. Although I enjoyed studying and having many good girlfriends in high school, I worked very hard. Normally, I had about 4 hours of homework, plus music practicing. I tried to be perfect in everything. Frankly, I was pretty burned out by graduation time, to the point that my parents made an appointment for me to talk with another local minister who had a background in psychology. His advice was for me to take a year off before going to college, something unheard of in those days. And so I went off on schedule to Vassar College to prove myself. It was soon evident that I was not going to be a straight A student there, especially among such talented girls who had been groomed for the academic rigors by their years in private school. I did very well, however, but once again, between academics and my music, plus a disappointing romance, I wore myself to a frazzle by senior year. As a matter of fact, I felt that I would never make it through finals, since I was so exhausted that I could no longer eat or sleep. I did pull through, with much help from some wonderful friends at the local Baptist church, but my grades suffered. Having been to France with the experiment in international living during the summer of my junior year, I was dying to return there, and did, as an assistant in English conversation for the following academic year at the Girls' Lycée in Reims. This experience put me on track for becoming a teacher, and later a professor of French. My daily walk between where I lived and where I took my meals led me past the famous Cathedral of Reims, which I entered often in varying light and at different seasons, and which I still consider my cathedral. During that year, I met and became close friends with Joanna, an Austrian woman my age, a devout Catholic. A number of years later, I met a very dynamic Belgian, Sister Beatrice, who taught one summer on the same campus as I in Brattlesboro, Vermont. That was the beginning of my acquaintance with Vatican II and what it meant, at least for some sisters. I remained very close to Beatrice for 14 years while she was called first to Southern California and then to Chiapas, Mexico, where she and another sister were killed in an automobile accident. During some of those 14 years, I was in graduate school, earning a PhD in foreign language education at Ohio State University. There, I met a sister of Notre Dame de Namur, Joanne Recker, and through her started going to Mass and feeling very welcome in her convent. It was she who urged me to go on a retreat in Milford, Ohio, when Beatrice's sudden death hit me so hard. When I exclaimed that I wasn't a Catholic, she merely said that it didn't matter. That was the first in a long line of 8-day retreats. In 1985, I happened to be at Milford again, and coincidentally, so was Joanne. It was that week that I began to consider not just remaining on the fringes of Catholicism. I shared this happy news with her and asked her what to do next. Fortunately, I was accepted late into the RCIA program at Christ the King in Lexington, where I encountered a wonderful Christian and terrific teacher in the person of Margie Ralph. My sponsors, mostly in absentia, were Joanne and Johanna, my dear Austrian friend. I became a Catholic at Easter in 1986, a celebration attended by my Berea College colleague and friend, Sister of Loretto, Jane Godfrey, who had quietly supported me during this process. Jane invited Dorothy Brown, another good friend and Catholic convert, and me to Mass and dinner at Loretto Mother House on Easter Day, without which there would have been a real letdown for me. My visits to the Mother House multiplied over the years as my attraction to this wonderful group of committed Catholic women grew. Jane was my initial contact, but I came to feel quite at home with Loretto. I made a number of friends at the Mother House and Loretto's around the country in the succeeding years. I believe that all my life I have been evolving into the kind of Christian that God intended me to be. From the day I was born in that Catholic hospital to a former Catholic turned Protestant and a devout preacher's daughter, until 1997 when I became a co-member of Loretto, seeds had been planted early that have been nourished by many along the way. Participating in Loretto liturgies with my flute is one of my greatest pleasures. Like Loretto, living simply is something that I have espoused for some time. So too is the love for and nurture of this wonder-filled earth that we call home. As a Loretto co-member, I commit myself to trust and follow the longing of my soul for God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, drawing me into ever deeper relationship. To hold in my heart and pray for all members of the community. To nurture relationships and to participate in gatherings of the community. To live out the mission and vision of the community by expressing and sharing my gifts as I continue to be led by the Spirit. My truth is named in this commitment, for which I am truly thankful. May the journey continue. Elise Andre died peacefully on March the 14th at the nursing facility at McCready Manor in Richmond, where she had retired to an apartment. Following the funeral here at Loretto, Elise's remains will be taken to Bridgeport, West Virginia, to be buried next to her parents.
It seems fitting to read a piece about the flute, since playing the flute was an important part of Elise's life. This is called I Have a Happy Heart by Brenda McGrath. Today I have a happy heart because I'm playing in a concert in the park. Music gives me peace and fills my soul. Playing my flute makes me feel whole. We will listen to 3 articles from I Am the Way, the Constitution of the Sisters of Loretto.
Our life in community in the present time empowers us for mission and is itself an expression of mission. Rejoicing in and strengthened by our mutual love, we go forth to meet our farther neighbor in their human needs and aspirations.
Forever I will sing the goodness of the Lord.
Our long and vital tradition of teaching takes many forms. We desire to educate others as well as ourselves to truth, beauty, and the ways of peace in the spirit of Jesus.
Forever I will sing the goodness of the Lord.
The Spirit of God is not bound. It reveals itself in the lives of everyone. Even as we give to others, we acknowledge our need to learn from those to whom we are sent.
Forever I will sing the goodness of the Lord. We will now have sharing of whatever we want to share about Elise. If you would come up to the microphone. Yes, and say your name, please. And this way.
My name is David Andre. I'm Elise's brother. I wanted to share with you some writings that I received from friends of hers. They take a little explanation as to who they are. The first is from a Swedish doctor, Göran Boetius, from Göteborg, Sweden. Göran was an American Field Service student who went to high school with me. It was Elise's first year in college when he was gone, but Göran actually tried to come. He was trying to figure out how he could come from Sweden for the funeral, but he sent me this to read. Dear Elise, dear friends, 63 years ago, we started a beautiful friendship between our families. In 1956, I was welcomed in the Andre family as an American Field Service Scholarship student. My reports back home about the loving and generous way in which I was included in the family contributed, I dare say, to my sister Inger's decision to apply for a Swedish American Foundation scholarship, eventually ending up in a marriage and 6 children family in Madison, Wisconsin. As will be expected, this had led to numerous contacts between our families and generations and countries. As a matter of fact, a perfect illustration of the aim of the American Field Service after 2 world wars, to create bonds between young individuals in all nations, helping prevent further disastrous hostilities, an idea worth remembering even today. After a few games of tennis at Chautauqua, New York, after my first arrival in the US in 1956, Elise went away to college. So we didn't see too much of each other until her linguistic skills and ambitions brought her to Europe. During frequent visits to Sweden for many years, she extended her family bonds to include professional education networks, members of which miss her today. As a representative of the Boetius family, I wish I had been able to be present today. We are grateful for having had Elise as a dear member of our extended family. She is in our hearts and thoughts today and for years to come. The next one is from his sister Inger, who married a law student who was going to the University of Wisconsin, and they still live in Madison, Wisconsin, and have 6 children. Dear David and friends, there are many warm, grateful feelings that join you today, not least from the Andre Boethius contingent. I met up with Elise far too seldom during the last decades, but she visited in Madison twice, and I in Berea twice as well. The outstanding memory I have of cute, curly-headed Elise is from my Christmas 1957 invitation to celebrate with Joran's dear family in Clarksburg. She and Father Oscar met me at the railway station as I arrived from Madison, Wisconsin on December 23. Ruby, David, Nancy, and others were at the house, so warm and welcoming. Ruby came towards me with a vase full of red roses and a curious expression. The bouquet was addressed to me, but without a sender's name. I hastily came up with the explanation that the gift was most probably a Christmas greeting from my sorority sisters in Madison. Then Ruby, with her beautiful rolling Southern speech, said that she doubted that the girls in the South would be so thoughtful. Well, then Elise and I moved upstairs to our bedroom, and I hugged my new friend and let her be the first to know that those roses were sent by my true love in Madison, and that I had long-term plans with him. Her hug and comforting elation at the news I will never forget. Elise remained close to me that week as we placed that phone call to my parents, letting everyone in on my happy news. The Boethius Christmas was shadowed, I know, with thousands of questions, but I had a wonderful holiday with Elise's support. She and I corresponded that following semester about our plans, and I was so grateful for her trust in my decision. Thanks, Elise. And then a very brief one from Gail Gunterman, who was a professor. She was at Ohio State. That's how they met when Elise was getting her doctorate. Gail was getting hers as well. She became a professor at Arizona State University. And Gail wrote, I'm sorry for your loss and mine. You have been through this too many times, I know, and each one leaves you more alone with the sad feelings and the responsibilities. Your obituary was excellent, by the way, and we do say the Ohio State University. When I wrote the obituary, Nancy said, I've never seen the use of the with Ohio State University. And I said, Ohio Staters say the Ohio State University. Elise's passing has affected me a lot, even though we've been pretty much out of touch. I have struggled with finding a way to get to Kentucky, but I have health issues so far this year and can't travel now. I will be here with my memories of Elise and all of the wonderful Andres who always were so gracious and kind to me. My love and very best wishes to you all. And then a couple of personal remembrances. When we were growing up, I suspect none of you knew that Elise was a real tomboy. She taught me how to play football, baseball, and basketball. And I got her hand-me-downs of baseball gloves, baseball bats, and basketballs. And she was the only person in the world that called me Butch. I think she stopped calling me Butch maybe when I went to college, but it was always Butch. And we would, I'm sorry.
My main being with Elise was playing, she was playing flute and I'd be playing the organ or the piano. And she'd be right over there using that music stand. And it was a wonderful gift for all of us. That's why I wanted Maria to play her little flute tonight. And those who've come, be sure you come up if you want to say something.
My name is Elaine Prevalet, and I really don't know how to talk about Elise. I knew her fairly well from the time that Jane Godfrey used to bring her over here, and when she got acquainted with Loretto. And I worked with her for a while. She was a highly accomplished person and very, very intelligent, but she would never push that. It was never anything that she sort of showed off about. She loved her French and everything French, and she loved to travel. She had wide interests, and in that respect, a very, very broad mind, I think. And I can only say that we here loved the flute playing. We loved Elise, but that her flute playing for our Sunday masses was just a wonderful contribution of something different that we didn't have access to. Seems like there was something else I wanted to say, but I kind of lost track of her in the last year or so. I knew that she was ill. We had talked about that, and then I just kept not hearing from her. And I should have taken some initiative about that, but I think I just kept waiting, and then it was too late. So I will miss her. She was a very eager participant in the community group that I am also in. And she took on work to do and represent us and that sort of thing. So she was very generous with her time and with her talent. And so I just bless her as she continues on the journey.
Elise Ramirez. I only knew Elise just from the time that I've been here at Loretto these last 6 years, but I always admired that she brought her dog with her. And I felt bad that she had to keep the dog in her car, but I always saw her going to the car and going on a walk. And I noticed that she didn't have little bags. And so I offered her some little bags. And she says, oh no, I've got that taken care of. She always had a little spade or a little shovel. And so she picked it up that way and then fertilized plants along the way. But I just, I always liked dog people. Well, even cat people too. But she was just always just very caring and concerned about her dog. And the other thing about her, when I first met her, I noticed that she had that white streak in her hair. And my mother also used to have one of those, so it was a nice remembrance.
Kathleen Vanderhaar. Eileen and I were for years in a book club that met monthly. And, you know, she never talked about herself, but she brought the richness, you know, of her background of being, you know, a convert. So she had the strength of many years of different ways of thinking. And yet she was so well read. And when we would finish one book and it was like, well, what should we read next? Well, she would always have the ideas and what do you think? And she would even go ahead and get those books for us through Amazon or whatever. But that went on for years. And when finally the doctor told her that something was going on and she had some time before it would really, you know, attack and be serious and keep her away, she came and never hinted, you know, that she was maybe not feeling up to par. She would also bring us things. Eileen can probably tell you the name of, at Christmas time, she would always bring us, okay. And sometimes she'd bring us little, whatever, fruit. She was just an extremely bright woman and interested, so interested in everything that was happening with women in the church. And yes, we do miss her in our group, but at least the group is doing well.
Nancy Ryan, and I'm totally unprepared, but I just felt that I was not going to let this moment go by. David began to talk about Elise's tomboy activity, which she kept really undercover. But we discovered, I guess it will be 30 years ago that I met Elise, and we discovered that we both love football, which we didn't talk about too much except to each other. But she was an ardent football fan. We did not like the same teams, but she was always happy when the Super Bowl came because her team always won. Even this last year, that we used to have a small Super Bowl party, and she would be the happiest one there. Because she loved Tom Brady and everything in New England with the Patriots. But Elise had a lot of interests and a lot of things that she shared with people. And we shared our interest in sports. And she could never become a basketball fan. I tried to convince her that she could learn basketball because as she got sicker, and her life became more limited, the TV became her outlet, and she was really disappointed when football season ended and we couldn't get her into basketball. But as she did become sicker, one of the things that we did, that was part of our, every Sunday I would call her up and say, okay, at 1 o'clock on CBS, you'll watch the AFC game. At 4 o'clock, watch the next game. And at 8 o'clock, there's another game. So you've got football from 1 until about 11 o'clock at night. And that was how we spent weekends for probably 3 or 4 years. And those are memories that I'll really treasure. And I'm very happy that I could keep the channel straight and the network straight and that she could enjoy football.
Mary Swain again. Nancy, what I kept hearing is, Nancy's a doctor, a physician, is that you were with Elise so much in the last, well, you're talking like 3 years or whatever, as she got more and more sick. And Nancy was there. And I just wanted the community to know that.
The mother house is finished.
Would anyone on Zoom like to share? Go ahead, Martha. Go ahead.
I really enjoyed Elise. I talked to her just a few weeks ago, and truly she did not sound sick or talk about being sick. You know, I said, "How are you doing?" She said, "Well, pretty well." You know, that was typical of her, I guess. And we shared a love of dogs. She always had the dogs around, often two, usually two. So we talked about that and our common roots in West Virginia. And when she came to town, excuse me, we always had dinner. And I don't remember any particularly deep conversations, but we always knew they were there. We could have them. And we did a lot of Loretto talk. And I guess they were deep conversations, but she just seemed like an old shoe, if you can excuse the expression. She was really a regular person that was a joy to be around.
Anyone else? Okay, back to you, Mother House.
Amen. Don't forget tomorrow's Mass is at 10 rather than at 7.